Hello, today we want to talk with Brent Bowers. Brent is a guy who has basically invested in real estate and learned that not every kind of investment in real estate is the same. And so he looked around, and if you really think about it, you find there's a lot of land nowadays that previous generations owned or had a farm on or stuff like that. And it gets inherited by the next generation or maybe two generations further. And oftentimes people have moved, they don't even live in the area and so forth and so forth. So the question becomes, what is happening with this land? Now, Brent is going to explain the details to us, but what is really, really interesting, and I want you to pay attention and listen closely, is how can you generate a cash flow, a passive income stream by buying and selling land. So that's what we're going to talk about, and you can't make more of it. So land is one of those things, other than residential real estate, as we always talk about, that is a real treat to own. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Ideal Investor Show. We are in season 2, and as you all know, season 2, the special thing that we do differently than in season 1 is we actually want to talk about cash flow, generating cash flow, and all variants about that, like including, for example, how do we do passive income? And we have a special guest to help us understand what is another one of the options that some people may not think so much about it. And that special guest is Brent Bowers, and we will talk a little bit about the high interest rates, but obviously also learn what does he do with his clients, and why is this another great supplement to investing in real estate investing. So Brent, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Axel.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really glad that we could make it work. So to start out, and I've kind of come to enjoy listening to what I call the origin story. So maybe if you don't mind, tell us a little bit, how did you get into being a land shark and doing what you're doing these days?
Yeah, so the origin story, I started in real estate in 2007. I had just got my real estate license. I bought that first rental property. I knew that one day I wanted to be a, real estate tycoon, rich investor. And I got my lunch handed to me. I got my teeth kicked in 2008, 2009, because the real estate market was going in the dumps. And I know a lot of people made money back then, but I quit. I threw in the towel. I watched 30-year veterans in the business getting out. So I was like, I got that in my head. I threw in the towel as a big quitter. So I chose an easier career path, the military. I got to go to Germany for about 3 years and was on multiple combat deployments to Afghanistan. And I was like, okay, I'm always gone. I'm always away. I was trying to be a family man. The first marriage, definitely failed miserably because I was always gone, and then met the woman of my dreams. We got married. The Army actually had sent me to college, and we had babies. And here I am on gearing up for deployment number 3 for another 9 months in a combat zone. But you have to prep and basically prepare for about a year. So you're like gone in the field. So you basically never see your family if you get in some of these units. And I started looking for answers. How can I get monthly passive income that will build a fortress, a financial fortress around my family that nothing will ever get through? And my bills were pretty inexpensive back then. They were like $4,500 a month. And I started buying and selling vacant raw land. And I was charging 0% interest, Axel, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. But now we're charging 12% interest. And we can talk about that more on the interest rate side of things. But these higher interest rates are actually helping me in multiple ways. But we have passive income now. I think we collected roughly $18,000 last month. We should collect about $21,000 this month in passive income. And that's if we don't flip any land or assign the contract on any land. That's just our payments we get every month.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I definitely, for the benefit of our audience, want to dive into what you do and how you do it and why it can be such a powerful tool to have that basically in hand, besides the things that we recommend and some other people that do recommend real estate investing and some other diversification tools. You said in 2007, when you started, you kind of got something handed to you that made you quit. Can you go a little deeper and tell the audience what that was, or what basically, I mean, people probably recall the financial crisis 2008 through 10, and, these kind of badly assigned mortgages, I would say, is probably one part. But there's a difference, right, between people that actually purchase or get offered to purchase a property for owner occupancy versus investing. So I would be curious to hear, and I don't want to open old wounds, but just in a nutshell, real quick, what was the thing that you didn't plan for that you got surprised by?
Yeah, so 2007, I actually went from being a business owner, got my real estate license. I bought that first rental property. I actually thought being a real estate agent would help me be an investor. Ultimately, I wanted to be an investor.
Right.
And, the mortgage meltdown kind of stopped things pretty fast for me. I had handed over the business. It was a lawn business. We were mowing grass, and handed that over to my dad. And I was making pretty good money. I was, making several $1,000s a month with my lawn business. And I just bought that first house and rented it out. And me and my fairly new wife, we had actually just gotten married as well. And we moved to the coast in West Palm Beach. And ultimately, it got so bad for me. I wasn't making any money in the real estate business. I was driving people around for like weeks at a time just to find them a rental house. And I was maybe making $300 per rental deal. So that was not enough to pay the mortgage, or actually to pay my rent. So I had to call my landlord and say, look, I can't afford it. So we moved in with my in-laws into a pretty small house. And I was ultimately getting very humble. I went from business owner to real estate license to rental property to I can't afford to even pay my rent. I need to move in with my in-laws. So that's kind of what happened, that things weren't moving, things weren't selling too quickly. We were still in that downward market to where it was going to level off. And if I would have just held on for another year, or maybe figured out some creative strategies, knowing what I know now, I would have flourished in that market. But I was just, wet behind the ears and just gave up too quickly.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for being willing to talk a little bit about that. The reason I wanted to check in with that is I think it sounds to me, and tell me if I'm wrong about that your purchase of an investment rental property was separate from you basically working as an agent or somebody in real estate trying to sell real estate to make a commission. So if that's true, how did that rental actually perform?
Yeah, the rental actually performed okay, but my mortgage was $750 a month. I was renting it out for $950, so $850, $950. That's really only $200 a month over really discretionary income. And here's the thing about rental properties: that something's always going to break every 6 to 9 months, it seems like. And this house, it did. I ended up having to pull out a home equity line of credit because, so many things went wrong with it. And I had to fix those things. And so there was no way I was living off of that extra $200 a month.
No, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. And that's actually one good thing, if you remember from when I introduced basically our show for today and the shows in season 2. The reason that we basically called the overall topic title cash flow is because there are really so many different aspects that influence cash flow. So we believe we should only invest in residential real estate even today when you take the mortgage, so principal, interest, property tax, and property management, plus the reserve for vacancy, capital expenditures, and maintenance. And then hopefully, at least at the start, have $100, $150, $200 a month. So when that is the deal, and it's obviously harder to find these days than it was maybe 5 years ago, but then it's at least a good starting point, because those things that can go wrong, like you said, every 6 months something happened, that's what these other 15% of the rent are for. And if the rent is not high enough, and the reason I wanted to ask for our audience is I've been writing and speaking about lately about the fact that because it's harder for people nowadays to actually get into houses for their own for buying a house to live in it, that means more of those people are basically potentially our tenants, right? And so from that perspective, having a situation where buying a house, whether it's a financial crisis or it's high interest rates and high inflation and those kind of things, whatever that circumstance is that makes it harder for owner occupants to buy a house, is typically a good thing for us as investors if we either own houses that we can rent or we add to our portfolio with new houses. Now, before we go into, the impact of interest rates, tell us and the audience, please, a little bit about how does this thing work with purchasing land and then also getting income out of land purchases?
Yeah, I'll tell you, I'll keep it really simple. What I do is I like to go in and see where the demand is at, where the land is selling. You can look at that on Zillow or Redfin by going to the filters, selecting sold, looking in the last 3 months, selecting land, and you can generally see pockets or little cluster patterns of what I like to call them. Or if you're on Zillow, it's the Zillow yellow dots. If it's on Redfin, it's the red dots. And then you can kind of figure out what that land is going for, what it's actually selling or trading for. And then if you click on all of them that have sold, and I'm trying to micro this down to neighborhoods, that's where people mess up. I believe they go in the county or sometimes the zip code. But if you can get into a neighborhood, you can really see the price per square foot or the price per acre of what this land is selling for. But here's another thing you see. You see what size parcel is in high demand. Okay, this one's a half acre, this one's a half acre, this one's a half acre, this one's 1 acre, half acre, half acre. Okay, half acre's in demand. We got it. And then another cool thing is if you scroll down a little bit more, you see who it was listed by and who it was bought by. That's the real estate agent. Sometimes you won't see that because it didn't sell with a real estate agent. But what you want to see is once you'll eventually see a pattern, like Bill Brown is the guy that sells all the land in this area. So that is your subject matter expert to help you in that area as well. But once you figure that out, you go to something like PropStream or ListSource, wherever you pull your data from, Agent Pro 247, pull the vacant land parcels and mail these landowners a very specific offer. I call it my LOL, my land offer letter, or laugh out loud. We mailed them an actual purchase agreement, sometimes 50 cents on the dollar, sometimes 20 cents on the, depending on where it's at. And really, you don't have to be at 50 cents on the dollar. If they're higher priced parcels, if they're like $600,000-$700,000 parcels of land, like you're in a very expensive area, you could probably offer 85 cents on the dollar and still have $100,000 spread easy on land. So if anybody wants that land offer letter, they can go to thelandsharks.com/LOL as in land offer letter. And you can download it, or I'm sorry, we'll email it to you. But that's really the whole thing. And what do we do to sell this land, to make money on it? Because this is where you had mentioned before the recording, virtually there's no competition because people don't realize that we can cash flow on land. And your audience is probably like, wow. Well, if you buy it at a big enough discount, I get it for say 30,000, it's worth 90,000. Well, Axel, would you be interested in purchasing this thing for 90,000? I'll let you make payments for $550 a month for the next 30 years. Because Americans think, how much is it going to cost each month? Not what's the total price, even though we're selling it for what it's actually worth. So we're selling our land faster. Interest rates don't matter because banks really don't finance this kind of land anyways, because it's kind of in a, inefficient area for these banks. They'd rather do $300,000-$400,000 and they'd rather do it on houses and apartments and bigger commercial stuff. But that's where we make the $18,000, $19,000, $20,000 a month, is getting those payments coming in every single month. And I didn't start there. I started with a $285 parcel and sold it for $5,000 and got $400 a month for that one. And then we just continuously built up our snowball. And now the other day, I got a little board here. You can't see it, but we borrowed 40 grand from my mother-in-law. We're paying her 9% interest. But the day we purchased that land, we had it sold for $90,000. So my mother-in-law is at less than 50 cents on the dollar for a lender. So she's in a pretty good position. We're paying her 9%. We're going to pay her off in 5 years. My buyer won't pay off until 13 years. So mother-in-law is paid off in 5 years. After she's paid off, I keep that $946 a month. So we'll make 100 grand on that deal. And I had none of my own money into it.
Okay, well, not everybody may have a mother-in-law like that, but so just to clarify, I mean, obviously when we drive around, there's all kinds of different kinds of lands and different kinds of zoning for land and stuff like that. So it sounded like, but I want to still kind of ask to make sure that we got it right. When you talk about land, are you talking about land that can ultimately is zoned in a way that somebody can put something on it, or is it just any kind of piece of land?
I prefer vacant residential. I've purchased some agriculture, not a ton. I've purchased some commercial, not a lot, but I really go after the vacant residential because there's just a bigger buyer pool for that.
Right. Okay. And so with that in mind, who would somebody who is buying a piece of land and pays a monthly payoff, so to speak, to ultimately own the piece of land, who are they ultimately planning to sell it to?
A lot of times they're buying it for themselves. I'm really selling to the retail buyer. For my first several parcels was from truck drivers. It was non-buildable land because it was, like in Colorado Springs where I was stationed in the military. I purchased several parcels that were just under the 5,000 square foot size. So you had to have 5,000 square foot to build in El Paso County. Well, some of these were 4,000, some were 3,500 square foot. Truck drivers would buy this land from me and park on it. Right. Every time they come through. Another guy just wanted to hunt on the land. It was actually surrounded by state land, so he actually had to trespass to get to the land, but he didn't care. He was going to work through that, and he got an attorney to get his ingress, egress, entrance and exit plan through there. So you name it, all kinds of people. I've got another guy just wants to have a piece of America. I've got college students that purchase land every state they go to. They live in their RV and they do their school virtually because they use the, what do you call it? The satellite internet that...
Starlink, yeah.
Starlink, there you go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, okay. That makes sense. Now, you said the deal, if I understand it right, is in finding suitable parcels through the process you described, and then making an offer that is below basically what we in the residential place would call market rate. Why or under what circumstances, based on your experience, do people who own the land be willing to sell it for less than it's potentially worth?
No, that's such a great question. I mean, I don't know why. I kind of stopped asking why. There's pawn shops all over Florida. And I never understood why someone would take in a Rolex or a gun and get like 5 cents on the dollar for it. And these are loans, so they're getting a loan, but most of the time they never come back. So the pawn shop sells their stuff. So it's just the speed and the convenience and the ease of it. Sometimes these people inherit this land. Sometimes they bought it 20 years ago and they were going to build their second home or their cabin on it, and life happened for them. They had children, and those children had children, and now they're paying, for those colleges of those children, and they just never did it. And they look back 20 years later like, oh my gosh, we got this letter from Brent. He's offering us $20,000 for this land. Honey, we should take it. Christmas is coming. I'm sick of paying these back taxes. We're never going to move out there anyways. Your sister lives close by. I can't stand your sister. Let's just sell the land.
Yeah, I get that part. And actually, you triggered something that I had been meaning to ask anyway in that same context. I mean, to the best of my knowledge, if you own a piece of land, there is some level of property tax on it typically. And if you don't pay it, then ultimately county or the state or some kind of government agency or authority can take it away. I think in California, it takes like 3 or 4 years before they can actually ultimately auction it off. But what I believe the audience might be interested in, so this owner that is getting your LOL, at least once a year, I would assume, has been getting their property tax bill to be reminded, okay, you still own this piece of land and you still have to pay the property tax. So besides that being a trigger to say, hey, I have no other use for it other than paying once a year, how important is it that other than having to pay that bill, there is no connection to that piece of land?
There's really not. There's not emotional ties. It's not like buying a home from someone. This is why I bought many houses. I've fixed up houses. I've wholesaled houses. And it was the hardest thing in the world to get people to accept a lowball offer, a low price offer for their house. They had their 3 children that grew up in there. They never replaced the carpet. They never painted. They're hoarders. But people hear like all the time, except for when Robert Kiyosaki says, no, you're wrong. Your house is your biggest investment. And what do investments do? They increase in value. So we should never sell our investment for less than what we pay. We should sell it for more. So people have that in their minds when they buy a house. But when they inherit a piece of land, or they bought a piece of land many years ago, sometimes they'll let it go for way less than what they actually paid for it. It's not beating their head, and they never lived there. They don't visit it. They get that once a year, that reminder, oh gosh, we got to pay for this freaking property taxes. And it's unemotional. I don't have to go and sit on their dirty, stinky cat pee couch to negotiate with them why they should sell their house to me at 65 cents on the dollar. And the roof's caving in. I'm like, do you see this? But
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's kind of what I always call the ugly duckling in the neighborhood that the turnkey providers need to buy and fix up before we buy it. Then, so we've been there too. One other thing that I think might be interesting and important for the audience is, you said there's all kinds of land out there, obviously, like truck drivers using it to park or other people using it for hunting and so forth. Are there any, like, because I'm really asking this on behalf of the audience, are there any categories where you would say, okay, if you had the choice or if you are intrigued and you want to get into this, go mainly or look for this? Obviously they want to take your course, no question, right? But even with that, is there a particular kind of land that is preferable over others?
The majority, the average land deals I do, they're all under 10 acres. Really, lately I've been doing a lot of infill lots, like closer to the city. When I started, I used to do stuff in the middle of nowhere. Now that stuff you can buy way cheaper, way less money, and you can 3x your money, you can 10x your money. So you buy it for $2,000, you can sell it for like $10,000, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. That's 5x in my money. It's great, right? But here's the thing, you got to work a little harder to sell that stuff. You got to put it on Craigslist and Facebook, maybe put some signs out, contact the neighbors, because a lot of times the neighbors will buy it from you. But when you get a little closer to the city, and you don't have to be in the city, you could be an hour outside of the city, and a little higher dollar price, like over, 20,000 or so, the realtors will help you sell that. So right. I like to be kind of in between. I like to be like 30 minutes outside of the city. If possible, I'll buy the stuff right in the city. That stuff goes quick, especially if you get a discount on it. And, there's a way bigger buyer pool and the real estate agents help you. And when you offer your seller financing, that's when it really gets exciting. So to answer your question, I like to be just kind of like teeter-tottering right outside of the city if possible. But I'll tell you, I'll pretty much purchase any parcel of land that there's a good profit in. And, going back to what you said, you kind of struck a nerve when you said, not everyone has a mother-in-law like mine. I'm very, very fortunate. But she had to watch me for almost 5 years buying and selling this land before she started lending to me. I didn't even know she had the money. But here's the thing. When I first started buying these parcels, I didn't have the money to buy them. So I'd have to partner with people that had self-directed IRAs, or I would, get the LOL under contract. I'd get the land under contract and I would assign it to someone like you, Axel, that, wanted to build on the land. I would get it under contract for like $15,000 and then assign it to you for $25,000 because the land was worth $35,000 and make a quick $10,000. And I just kept building my bank account and, paying off my credit cards and things like that. And then another strategy, the last one, there's many strategies that sell this land, but the coolest one is when you buy it for $5,000, it's worth $15,000, and you find a buyer that can do a $5,000 down payment and pay you $200 a month for the next 5 years. Then you get your investment back out of the deal and you're profitable immediately. That first rental property took me a long time to be profitable on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that I thought in preparation of our conversation today was, okay, and I can use my own example for that. When I first started out investing into the residential real estate properties, basically rental properties, and you hold them for a while, and I'm willing to say I was somewhat lucky that I started 2018, 2019 and stuff like that to really seriously invest. Well, then, and I believe nobody can really predict what the market is going to do, but everybody knows the following few years, real estate prices, especially in the residential area, went up significantly. But then when you flip it around and say, okay, well, so my $85,000 rental property that I bought went up somewhere in the Midwest to 105. And that's great in and of itself, even though we didn't buy it to get the appreciation. We bought it and do it for cash flow. But now I have 15,000 or 20,000 of equity sitting in there. That's really not enough to buy another house. But I was thinking, okay, well, if we hook up with Brent, that is kind of like mother-in-law kind of money. So that could be something for some of the members of the audience who say, well, I have a few of these houses and they don't have huge equity because they weren't that expensive to begin with, but the equity to activate it, that would be potentially an opportunity. Now, one thing I wanted to tap into real quick, Brent, I saw when I prepared and went to your website that you're offering the course for people to learn how to do it. Can you, beyond that, are there any other things that if somebody said, well, I want to learn about it, but does Brent also offer something to help me to actually find the properties, buy the properties, sell the properties, besides taking a course? Are you basically taking people by the hand and lead them through this a few times or something along those lines?
Yeah, absolutely. We obviously offer the course, the video modules to show you the actual steps to take, really in detail, how to pick the market, how to find landowners, how to price the land, how to mail the owners, what to say when they call you, and then how to sell it. And then also we do some multiple support calls each week, as well as, we have the forum. We can answer questions all day long because you're going to have success in this really quickly, but there's always going to be more questions to ask. I'm talking to the guy that's been to so many seminars. Where are those guys during the week when I'm like calling them because I can't figure out?
Absolutely. Well, and I think in my experience as a mentor for the residential investments, it's really the fear of losing the money, not because it was from the get-go a bad deal, but just because you didn't consider this and you didn't consider this and nobody had actually yet told you that comes later in the course and stuff like that. So, that's, I think, where the benefit of having access and having somebody, like I said, who's holding the client's hand to say, okay, well, let me take you through a few. And after the third one, it's probably not that hard to keep going on your own.
Absolutely. Yeah. My goal is to get you at least 3 land deals. Once I get you there, you're rolling. You're like addicted. I just had Alana, she's a single mother of 4, just did her 4th land deal. Well, her 3rd one is when she got addicted. $28,000 net profit deal. And that's changing her life for a single mom of 4 kids. But, I'm also every single day on TikTok. I just started TikTok. I do a video every day teaching how to invest in vacant raw land. Follow me at Brent L. Bowers. And then we talked about the Wholesaling Inc. podcast. I interview my students. I hold their feet to the fire. So we give free information how to do a land deal. Because I'm asking, how many mailers did it take? How did you sell this thing? What did you make? So it's a fun time.
Yeah, that's really cool. Now, let's pivot a little bit to this component that we wanted to touch on that you had basically chosen as part of our season 2 series. And that is talking about high interest rates. Yeah. So what have you learned and what can you tell the audience what the impact of the pretty massive, like what are we now, 8 times or so the interest rate that we had 15 months ago? So yeah, I'll tell you,
July is when I saw the interest rates really start to affect people. And I noticed the housing market kind of really slowed down, and now it's going down. Like I saw on Fox News in the gym this morning, housing sales plummeting. Well, here's what happens with land. It follows really closely to the housing market. And what do builders and developers need to build on? That's vacant raw land. Well, as the building slows down, so do the land sales. And here's what I'm already seeing from land sellers. They're already seeing it. They're watching Fox News. They see prices going down. I'm starting to see deals I didn't see 8 months ago because they see the signs popping up. They see people taking longer to sell land to where now they're open to selling at a way bigger discount. But number 2, they're also willing to sell or finance me the land at principal payments, aka I just said 0% interest. So, hey, Mr. Seller, I can't give you $50,000 for that land, but what I can do is I can give you $30,000 and I can pay you $1,000 a month for 30 months. How does that sound? Okay, I'm getting $30,000 deal, plus I'm paying $1,000 a month, 0% interest. Now that might be a little high, that might be a little crazy, but here's all I have to do. I have to find a buyer that's willing to do like a $5,000 down payment and pay me $1,100 a month, and they buy it for $40,000. So I'm going to make money in the beginning. I'm going to make money every single month. I'm going to make money in the end. It's kind of like a sandwich lease option that people teach about. So I'm seeing those. I'm also seeing land and foreclosure already.
Oh, really?
And you didn't see that. You didn't see that in the past 2.5 years. I haven't seen that in a while. And then here's another thing. When we sell the land, we're charging anywhere from 9 to 12% interest. Well, people are not like shuddering when they see 12% interest because, well, it cost me 7%, 6% to buy a house. So land, why not pay a little bit more? But we did a sale the other day. We like lowered it down to 4% and blew some land out real quick. But people were freaking out. Oh my gosh, only 4%. Well, there was a time when I first started buying and selling land, I only charged 0% interest because I thought, oh, that's the reason why they'll buy from me is at 0% interest. I must have did 25 or 30 notes before I started charging like 4%, 5% interest. So it's been really fun to play with that interest game. It's like printing money. It really is.
I agree with you. The other thing to keep in mind is, we not just have increased interest rates, we also have quite a substantial amount of inflation, not potentially in the value assets so much, at least not right now. We had it in the past years until the markets changed. But the inflation also just generally means that the value of money is going down. So I think you have every right, and us the same thing, to say, okay, well, if you want me to do something over a period of time, and in that period of time, the value of that money goes down by 5%, 8%, 9% or so forth, then you should be compensated, right? I always like to put it a little bit that way because it's not really charging. It's just retaining the value of the money, from when you first start until you actually maybe flip the deal or sell it to somebody or whatever their circumstance may be.
Yeah, we talked about my mother-in-law lending. That was the biggest reason for it, is because they had the money in a safe, like, or in the bank or whatever, earning 0% interest. So my father-in-law is looking at like, my 100K is now worth, it's now worth like 90K.
Right.
So he's getting interest. And then the people that are buying the land from us are doing something called land banking, because the land is actually outrunning inflation, or at least making it neutral. I have a good friend. She's the CEO for United Way. She just came back from a cruise, and there was 346 land bankers on that cruise. They got to bring their spouses and their children because they had the best year ever. It's because they were able to call rich people and get them to put, well, I shouldn't even say rich people. They basically acted like Wall Street, called people with money doing nothing in bank accounts or maybe in the stock market, and got them to move that money into land that they're going to sit on for 10 or 15 years. So their money doesn't deflate.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think that's an important component to realize right now in this day and age that we are in. And I mean, if I'm listening correctly to what those who have the levers on the interest rate are saying, we are nowhere near being done. So it's probably going to continue to go for a little while, at least at this level, maybe even a little higher. So I think we really kind of peeled the onion a little bit of what it is, that it can start with relatively low amounts and then go up, or with just one deal or two deals and then keep increasing multiple deals, getting addicted, all those kind of things. So if somebody says, wow, what Brent is doing and getting into the real estate market without having, multiple tens of thousands of dollars in a savings account already, how do they get in touch with you? What would be the best way to maybe connect and see how somebody that is intrigued now, not yet addicted, but intrigued, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, thanks for asking, Axel. And I'll tell you, I was a guy with high debt. I owed American Express and Capital One quite a bit of money, and I didn't have any time either because I was an Army officer. So you can do this with very little money, very little time, very little resources if you have a big enough why. My why was to get out of the military. To answer your question, you can reach out to me on Instagram, Brent L. Bowers, or hit me up on TikTok, Brent L. Bowers.
Yeah, that's really great. And one thing that I recently saw on Medium, where I always once a week try to post an article where somebody said the thing that you want to find out to do besides what you kind of have to do to afford your life and all those things that you just mentioned is something where you can say, I'm doing it because I'm obsessed. Right. And so that's actually the fun part, because then it doesn't matter if it's late at night or on the weekend or during President's Day or anything like that. So I thought that was an intriguing thought for people to say, okay, if I wanted to get into something in real estate and I don't have a lot of money, what could I be obsessed about? And I think what you guys do, Brad, could be one of those things. So thank you for being on the show. One more time, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, you can head on over to thelandsharks.com if you want me to hold your hand and show you how to build the actual land business that serves you and your family, or hit me up on Instagram or TikTok, Brent L. Bowers. L is in land.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So thank you for being on the show, Brent. And as I say at the end of a show, every show is be well, stay safe, and we see you next time.
God bless.
Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Ideal Investor Show. More info and the links we mentioned during the show are in the show notes, or you can go to our website at idealwealthgrower.com and sign up for the Apple Podcast link. And if you like to talk to me, sign up for a strategy call. Hopefully you want to share what you learned with your network and bring more people in. We are really eager to hear your comments. And until next time, be well, stay safe, and ciao.